Have you ever imagined having everything you've always dreamed of? A stunning mansion, luxury cars, and a limitless bank account? At 45 years old, Hugo is a successful millionaire. But despite all this success, he feels deeply empty and disconnected. During a morning run in his upscale neighborhood, something unexpected happens. A little girl approaches Hugo and with a curious smile says, "I know you. Your picture is in my daddy's wallet." This simple and unexpected phrase leaves Hugo completely stunned. What could this little revelation mean for him? Get ready to discover how this surprising encounter will lead Hugo to confront his past, fill the emptiness he feels, and find a new purpose in life. But first, check if you're already subscribed to my channel. I'd be happy to have you with me. A start full of success but empty inside. Hugo had everything that many dream of having. An impressive mansion, luxurious cars in the garage, trips to exotic places, and a bank account that seemed endless. At 45 years old, he was considered one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the city. Hugo's journey to the top wasn't easy, but he got there, building an empire with much effort and determination. But behind all this facade of success, there was something that no one knew. Hugo carried a deep feeling of sadness and loneliness that accompanied him everywhere. To others he had everything, but to himself it seemed that something essential was missing. Every Sunday morning, Hugo would wake up early and prepare for his morning run. It was a ritual he kept religiously, a moment when he tried somehow to silence the thoughts that troubled him. He would put on his expensive sneakers, wear running clothes from famous brands, and head out into the quiet tree-lined streets of his high-class neighborhood. As he ran, Hugo observed the houses around him, all similar to his own, large and imposing. The streets were well kept, with trees that seemed to have been planted in the exact spots to create a sense of perfection. The families in the gardens, the children playing on the sidewalks, and the neighbors waving from their porches seemed to live a perfect, worry-free life. But contrary to what many might think, that morning run was not a moment of pleasure for Hugo. On the contrary, it was a time when he felt even more aware of the emptiness he carried in his chest. Every step he took seemed to echo in his mind, reminding him that despite all his success, something was missing. During the run, Hugo would often get lost in his thoughts. He remembered the times when he was building his career, when he worked day and night to achieve his goals. Back then, he believed that by reaching success, he would find happiness. But now he was at the top, and the happiness he had expected to find was not there. The fancy neighborhood where he ran was the perfect setting for someone who, in the eyes of others, had an enviable life. But for Hugo, those streets symbolized everything he had achieved and at the same time, everything he could not fill in his soul. Success, which once was his greatest goal, now seemed like a golden prison, where he was trapped in a routine that only accentuated his feeling of emptiness. Hugo missed something that money couldn't buy. He remembered when he was younger, before getting lost in the relentless pursuit of success, when the simple things in life made him happy. Now he realized that despite all the luxury around him, he was alone. He had no one to share his achievements, joys, or even his sorrows with. And so, every Sunday morning, Hugo would run through the same streets, with the same emptiness in his chest, hoping somehow that this run would lead him to find what was missing in his life. Little did he know that an unexpected encounter was about to change everything and show him that what he really needed was not in the great material achievements, but in something much deeper and truer. A surprising encounter. Hugo was halfway through his morning run, feeling the steady rhythm of his steps and the soft sound of his breathing. The streets were quiet as always, the sun was beginning to rise on the horizon, casting a gentle light over the elegant neighborhood. He kept going, lost in his thoughts as usual, when something unexpected happened. Suddenly, he noticed a small figure approaching him. It was a little girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, with curly brown hair and curious eyes. She was dressed simply, wearing a colorful dress that seemed to have been well loved and worn many times. Hugo, used to running alone and avoiding interactions during these moments, was surprised to see her so close. The girl, who seemed determined, got even closer and stopped right in front of Hugo, forcing him to slow down until he came to a complete stop. He looked at her with a mix of curiosity and surprise, trying to understand what such a small child was doing there alone, and why she had chosen to approach him. Before Hugo could say anything, the girl opened a shy smile and said, with a soft voice full of disarming innocence. "I know you. I've seen your picture in my daddy's wallet." The girl's words struck Hugo like lightning. He felt a chill run down his spine. He didn't know how to react. A picture of me in her daddy's wallet? He thought, confused and intrigued. How was that possible? He looked at the girl, trying to find some familiarity in her face, but he couldn't remember seeing her before. Luisa, which was the girl's name, seemed to sense Hugo's confusion. She continued speaking, with the simplicity of a child who had no idea of the impact of her words. "My daddy showed me once. He said you were important to him, but I didn't really understand. So when I saw you here, I thought I should talk to you." Hugo's heart beat faster. He was stunned, feeling a mix of emotions he couldn't explain. Why would this girl's father have a picture of him? What did it mean? He tried to piece together this puzzle, but nothing made sense. Hugo knelt to be at Luisa's level, with a gentle, though still perplexed expression. "What's your daddy's name?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm, though his mind was racing. Luisa smiled again, unaware of the tension in the air, and replied with the same natural ease as before. "His name is Arthur. He works a lot, but he always tells me stories about you. He said that one day you were very close, but that he lost track of you." Upon hearing the name Arthur, Hugo's world seemed to stop for a moment. That name brought back an avalanche of memories he had tried to forget many years ago. Arthur. He hadn't heard that name in nearly a decade. Hugo felt a tightness in his chest, and a pain he thought was dormant resurfaced. Arthur was his brother, with whom he had lost contact so long ago. Luisa's revelation made time seem to drag. Hugo stood there in silence, while the girl's words echoed in his mind. He remembered when he and Arthur were inseparable, when they shared dreams and hopes, before they followed different paths that pulled them apart. He remembered the fights, the harsh words exchanged, and how life pushed them to opposite sides. But now, here was Arthur's daughter, a niece he didn't even know existed, standing in front of him, bringing news of the brother he had lost. Hugo felt a mix of regret and hope. Perhaps this was the moment he had so desperately needed, the moment to rediscover something that truly mattered in his life. "Luisa," Hugo said, his voice now filled with a new emotion. "Can you take me to your father? I need to see him." The girl nodded enthusiastically, and holding Hugo's hand, she began to guide him through the neighborhood streets. As they walked, Hugo felt that, for the first time in a long while, he was heading towards something of real value. He didn't know how the reunion would go, but he knew it had to happen. And so, the man who had been running in search of something to fill his inner void was led by a small hand that would take him back to his own heart, to the reunion with his brother, and perhaps, to the healing of the sadness that consumed him inside. A curiosity that leads to a discovery. Hugo felt his heart race as he walked alongside Luisa. With every step he took, curiosity grew inside him like a flame that refused to be extinguished. He never imagined that his morning run would lead to such an unexpected encounter, and now he was about to discover something that could change his life forever. Luisa, with her childlike energy, pulled Hugo by the hand, leading him through streets he wasn't used to traveling. Gradually, the tall, elegant buildings of his neighborhood gave way to simpler houses, with facades worn by time but carrying a unique beauty, of those who would stand the passage of years. The surrounding trees were older, the gardens small but well-maintained, and Hugo began to realize that he was entering a world quite different from what he was accustomed to. Finally, they arrived at a modest house, with walls painted a faded shade of blue and a small garden in front, where a few brave flowers still bloomed, despite the lack of care. The simplicity of the place touched something inside Hugo, a nostalgic feeling he couldn't define. Luisa let go of Hugo's hand and ran to the house's door, where she began to call out, "Daddy, Daddy! You won't believe who I found." Hugo paused for a moment, observing the scene with a mixture of anxiety and curiosity. He was about to meet Luisa's father, and something inside him told him that this was more than just a simple encounter. His mind was filled with questions, but he knew he would soon have answers. The door of the house slowly opened, and a man appeared on the threshold. He was shorter than Hugo, with broad shoulders and a tired posture, like someone who had carried the weight of the world on his shoulders for many years. His eyes, however, were bright and full of a kindness that contrasted with the lines of worry on his face. Hugo could hardly believe what he was seeing. He stood there, paralyzed, his gaze fixed on the man before him. This man, Raphael, was his younger brother, the same one with whom he had lost contact almost a decade ago. The shock of recognition was like a punch to the stomach. For a moment he couldn't say anything, he just stood there, trying to process what was happening. Raphael was also surprised to see Hugo standing there, at the entrance to his house. Time seemed to have frozen as they stared at each other, both trying to absorb the reality of this unexpected reunion. The years of separation felt like an invisible barrier between them, full of unsaid memories, stored grievances, and a heavy silence. Finally, Raphael broke the silence, his voice rough and incredulous. "Hugo, is it really you?" Hugo felt a lump in his throat upon hearing his name from the brother he had lost. He took a step forward, his mind still reeling with the revelation.
Rafael.
I didn't know you were here." The two brothers were silent for a moment, assessing each other. They were different now, not just because of the marks time had left on their faces, but also because of the lives they had each led since they parted ways. Hugo realized that his brother had gone through many difficulties, and he felt a mix of sadness and guilt for not being there. Raphael, in turn, seemed to be struggling with a mix of emotions. He hadn't expected to see Hugo, especially after so many years. But there he was, the brother he hadn't seen since their lives took opposite directions. Luisa, who was watching everything beside them, without fully understanding the depth of the moment, finally broke the ice. "You know each other?" she asked, looking from one to the other, unaware of how profound that simple question was. Hugo and Raphael exchanged a look full of meaning. There was so much to be said, so much to be explained, but neither knew where to begin. Luisa's voice, however, brought a much-needed lightness to the situation. Raphael sighed and smiled at his daughter, with evident affection. "Yes, Luisa, we know each other. This is your uncle Hugo." The word uncle echoed in Hugo's mind as a reminder of what he had lost during all those years of separation. He had a niece he didn't know, a brother he had left behind, and now somehow fate had brought them together again. "Raphael," Hugo finally said, his voice choked with emotion. I had no idea you were so close. I'm sorry. For everything." Raphael shook his head, as if struggling with the same emotions. "I'm sorry too, Hugo. But maybe this is the moment to leave the past behind and start over." The two stared at each other for another moment before Raphael took a step forward and opened his arms in a gesture of reconciliation. Hugo didn't hesitate. He moved closer and hugged his brother, a hug that carried all the unspoken feelings, the apologies never uttered, and the hope of a new beginning. Luisa watched the scene, smiling, not fully understanding the significance of the moment, but knowing in her heart that something special was happening. Hugo felt the warmth of Raphael's embrace and knew that, although much time had passed, there was still a chance to repair what had been broken. At that moment, he realized that the curiosity that had led him there was not just to learn more about Luisa and her father. It was a journey of rediscovery, of finding the brother he had lost, and perhaps of filling the void that had consumed him inside. An emotion-filled reunion. Hugo and Raphael stared at each other, still in shock from the reunion. The hug they had shared moments before seemed to have brought forth an avalanche of feelings and memories that both had kept locked away for so many years. The silence between them was laden with emotion, as if all the words that needed to be said were stuck in their throats. Finally, Hugo broke the silence. His voice was low and a bit hoarse, as if he were trying to hold back tears. "Raphael, I don't even know where to start. It's been so long that I don't even know how to talk to you anymore." Raphael smiled sadly, recognizing the difficulty of the moment. "Me neither, Hugo. So many things have happened since the last time we saw each other. Life took us down such different paths." They sat in the small living room of Raphael's house, which was simple but cozy. The furniture was old but well-maintained, and the smell of fresh coffee filled the air, bringing a sense of comfort. Luisa, sensing that the two needed a moment alone, quietly left, leaving the two brothers to talk. As they settled in, Hugo looked around, noticing the details of the life his brother had built without him. Photos of Luisa in various stages of her childhood were scattered on the shelves, alongside small mementos of important moments. He felt a pang in his heart as he realized how much he had missed during all those years of separation. I remember when we were little, Raphael began, breaking the silence again. We used to run through the fields behind our house, racing to see who could reach the hill first. I always lost, but you never left me behind. You always came back and ran beside me, even if it meant you'd lose too. Hugo smiled at the memory. I couldn't leave you behind, Raphael. You were my little brother. But somehow in adulthood I did leave you. And for that, I'm sorry. Raphael shook his head, his expression sad. It wasn't just you, Hugo. I also had my share of blame. Life pulled us apart and I didn't do enough to stay in touch either. They fell silent again, each lost in their own memories. Hugo remembered the days when they were inseparable, always together, always looking out for each other. But over time, responsibilities, challenges, and mistakes had driven them apart. Hugo's success in the business world and Raphael's struggles to survive amid difficulties had created a chasm between them. I wonder, Hugo said softly, how things could have been different if we had tried harder to keep in touch. How many moments did we miss because of pride or fear? Raphael looked at Hugo, his eyes reflecting the same question. I wonder the same, Hugo, but maybe instead of lamenting what we've lost, we should focus on what we can rebuild now. We can't change the past, but we can do something about the future. Those words struck Hugo deeply. He realized that Raphael was right. The past was full of regrets, but the present offered a new opportunity for reconciliation, to reconnect and rebuild the bonds that had been broken. You're right, Hugo agreed, with renewed determination in his voice. Let's take this chance, Raphael. I want to be part of your life and Luisa's life. I want to make up for lost time, even if it's not easy. Raphael smiled, a genuine smile that lit up his time-worn face. I want that too, Hugo, more than anything. The two brothers hugged again, but this time, there was no hesitation or discomfort. It was a hug filled with hope, brotherly love, and a silent promise that they wouldn't lose each other again. The scars of the past were still there, but now there was a desire to heal them, to rebuild the relationship that had once meant so much to both of them. As they talked, reminiscing about childhood moments and sharing the stories of the years they had spent apart, the emptiness that Hugo had carried inside him began to diminish. He realized that, although money and success had given him a comfortable life, it was human connection, family, that truly gave meaning to his existence. The afternoon passed, and with it, the feeling that a new chapter was beginning in the lives of the two brothers. A chapter that, although it could not erase the previous pages, promised to be written with more care, more love, and more understanding. And so, the reunion of Hugo and Raphael was not just a moment of memories but the beginning of a new journey, where they were both willing to walk together, side by side, like in the old days. The past had left its marks, but the future was open, ready to be lived, one day at a time. Trying to start over. Hugo spent the night reflecting on everything that had happened. The reunion with Raphael and Luisa had deeply affected him. He realized that for a long time, he had been focused only on his career, his business, accumulating more and more success. But now, sitting alone in his luxurious mansion, he understood that all those achievements meant nothing without people to share them with. The next morning, Hugo made a decision. He knew he needed to do something to bring his family back together. It was time to leave the past behind and try to start over. He picked up the phone, took a deep breath, and called Raphael. His heart was racing, a mix of nervousness and hope. Raphael, Hugo began, trying to keep his voice steady. I know yesterday was an emotional day. I thought a lot about everything, and I'd like to spend more time with you and Luisa. How about we go out together today? Maybe to a park? We can talk more and perhaps take the first step toward rebuilding what we've lost. On the other end of the line, Raphael was silent for a few seconds. Hugo could almost hear his brother's thoughts, the doubts and conflicting feelings that must have been running through his mind. Finally, Raphael replied, his voice soft and sincere. I think that's a good idea, Hugo. Luisa will love it. Let's do it. Later that day, Hugo went to pick up Raphael and Luisa at their house. When they arrived at the park, the sun was shining. The trees swayed gently in the wind, and the sound of children's laughter filled the air. Hugo looked at Luisa, who was excitedly running towards the playground. Her energy was contagious, and he found himself smiling, something he hadn't done in a long time. As Luisa enjoyed herself, Hugo and Raphael walked side by side, watching her from a distance. The silence between them was comfortable, different from what they had felt the previous day. Hugo finally broke the silence. You know, Raphael, I was so focused on my work that I forgot what really matters. I forgot about our family, about you. And for that, I'm sorry. Raphael looked at his brother, his gaze reflecting a mix of pain and understanding. I made mistakes too, Hugo. But what matters now is that we're here trying to start over. Let's enjoy this time together. Without rushing, the two continued walking through the park, talking about their lives, their struggles, and their hopes for the future. Hugo told Raphael about the pressures and responsibilities that had led him to drift away, while Raphael shared the challenges he faced raising Luisa alone. After a while, they sat on a bench as Luisa approached with a smile on her face, holding 2 colorful ice creams. Uncle Hugo, I bought one for you, she said excitedly, extending one of the ice creams to him. Hugo laughed, accepting the ice cream with gratitude. Thank you, Luisa, you're very kind. He looked at Raphael and Luisa, feeling a simple and genuine joy that he hadn't experienced in years. As the afternoon progressed, the three continued talking and enjoying themselves together. Hugo felt that little by little he was beginning to build a new relationship with Raphael and Luisa. A relationship based on respect, on affection, and most importantly, on the desire to be present in each other's lives. When the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, Hugo looked at his companions and felt a warmth in his chest. He knew this was just the beginning of a long journey, but he also knew he was ready to face it. The important thing was that now he wasn't alone. As they walked back to the car, Hugo looked at Raphael and Luisa and said with a smile on his face, "Let's make this a habit. What if we go out together every Sunday? I'm sure there's still a lot we can discover about ourselves." Raphael smiled, agreeing, and Luisa, holding the hands of both men, exclaimed happily, "That would be amazing, Uncle Hugo. Let's do it always." And so Hugo realized that the true wealth of life wasn't in the money he had accumulated, but in the simple and sincere moments he was now beginning to live alongside his family. He knew there was still much work to be done, but he was determined to continue one step at a time. Raphael's struggles. As they walked through the park, the sun began to set, casting a golden glow on the surrounding trees. Hugo felt that it was the right moment to understand better what his brother had gone through during all those years. He looked at Raphael, who was watching Luisa play in the distance, and decided to ask something that had been on his mind since they reunited. "Raphael, during all those years we were apart, what happened in your life? I know something drove you away from me and our family, but I never really knew what it was." Raphael remained silent for a few moments, as if he was organizing his thoughts. He sighed deeply and began to speak, his voice heavy with a burden Hugo could never have imagined. "Hugo, my life wasn't easy. After we drifted apart, I lost myself in a dark path. I fell into the world of addiction, and it consumed me completely. I was alone, directionless, and I plunged into that abyss without thinking of the consequences." Hugo felt a tightness in his chest hearing those words. He couldn't imagine the suffering Raphael must have endured. "Raphael, I didn't know. I should have been there for you," Hugo said, his voice choked with emotion. Raphael shook his head, his expression sad but determined. "It wasn't your fault, Hugo. I chose that path, but life gave me a second chance. When Luisa was born, something inside me changed. I looked at her, so small and helpless, and I realized I couldn't continue like that. She needed a father, someone who was present, who would take care of her. That's when I decided I had to change." Hugo saw the tears in Raphael's eyes and understood the depth of what he was saying. Raphael's story touched him deeply, like a knife cutting straight into his heart. He had never thought about how someone's wrong choices could cause so much suffering, but at the same time, he saw how strong Raphael had been to overcome all of that out of love for his daughter. "Giving up vices wasn't easy," Raphael continued, his voice now steadier. "I had to fight every day not to fall back into them. It was a long and painful process, but I knew I had to be strong. Every time I looked at Luisa, I knew I was doing it for her. She gave me a strength I never knew I had." Hugo felt a lump in his throat, emotions swirling inside him. "Raphael, I don't have words to express how much I admire you for that. You've become a much stronger man than I ever imagined. And Luisa, she's a blessing in your life, and now I see that she's also a blessing in mine." Raphael smiled, a sincere smile full of gratitude. "Yes, Hugo, she is. And that's why I want you to be part of our life from now on. I know we have a long road ahead, but I'm willing to start over, and I'm happy you're here now." Hugo placed a hand on Raphael's shoulder, feeling a bond that had long been lost but was now finally being restored. "We're in this together, Raphael. We'll overcome all of this as brothers, as a family. And I promise that I'll never distance myself from you and Luisa again." As the two brothers embraced, feeling the warmth of reconciliation, Hugo realized that this was just the beginning of a new phase in their lives. The pain of the past was still there, but now there was hope. And that hope was what would guide them to a better, more united future, where love and mutual support would be the foundation of everything. And so, in the middle of that park, as the sun set on the horizon, Hugo and Raphael decided that together, they would rebuild not only the relationship they once had, but also the lives they had left behind. Building a new beginning after the emotional reunion and heartfelt conversation in the park, Hugo realized that there was a precious chance to rewrite his past and build a new future with his brother and niece. He wanted more than just words. He wanted to show Raphael and Luisa how much they meant to him. At the end of that afternoon, as the sun set and the city began to light up, Hugo invited Raphael and Luisa for a special dinner at his mansion. The idea was simple: create a space where new memories could be made, a place where the family could reconnect and grow closer. Hugo's mansion was an impressive structure, with large windows offering a breathtaking view of the city. The place was imposing, with a well-kept garden and an elegant entrance. But for Hugo, the grandeur of the place mattered less than what was behind its doors. When Raphael and Luisa arrived, Hugo greeted them with a warm smile and a tight hug. He was eager for them to see not only the splendor of his home, but also how much he was willing to invest in the new phase of their lives together. "Welcome," Hugo said, opening the door with a welcoming gesture. "I'm so happy you could be here. Let's take this moment to get to know each other better and start building new memories." The interior of the mansion was elegant, with sophisticated decor, but Hugo had worked hard to create a cozy atmosphere for the occasion. The living room was softly lit by lamps and candles, and the dining table was set with a beautiful floral arrangement in the center. Luisa, with her curious and bright eyes, explored the house with fascination. Hugo led her to a garden area, where there was an outdoor space with a gazebo and a small fountain. He thought Luisa would appreciate the beauty and tranquility of that place. While Raphael admired the mansion, Hugo prepared a special dinner. The aroma of the carefully prepared dishes began to spread through the house. It was a simple meal, but full of flavor and care, reflecting Hugo's desire to create a family-friendly and welcoming environment. As they sat down for dinner, conversations began to flow naturally. Hugo asked Luisa about her school activities and hobbies. She spoke enthusiastically about her passion for drawing and the joy she felt playing with her friends. Raphael, watching his daughter with a proud look, answered Hugo's questions about the challenges and joys of raising Luisa on his own. As the dinner progressed, Hugo shared stories of his own life, revealing aspects of his past that he had never discussed before. He talked about his travels, his achievements, and even about the difficulties he had faced, always emphasizing the importance of family and mutual support. The atmosphere was filled with laughter and lively conversations. The ice was broken, and the family bonds began to strengthen. Hugo noticed that as the night went on, Raphael and Luisa were more relaxed and happy. He felt he was succeeding in creating a space where trust and friendship could flourish. After dinner, Hugo took Raphael and Luisa to a small game room, where there was a ping-pong table and a collection of board games. They spent some time playing and having fun together, laughing and celebrating the new connection that was forming. When the night came to an end, Hugo looked at Raphael and Luisa and said, "I'm so happy to have you here. This is just the beginning of a new chapter for our family. I want you to know that you can count on me for anything. Let's enjoy every moment together and create memories that will last forever." Raphael and Luisa smiled, their hearts full of hope and gratitude. Hugo felt a wave of satisfaction, knowing he was doing the right thing. The mansion, once a symbol of his life of success and solitude, was now becoming a home where love and family were the priority. As Raphael and Luisa said their goodbyes and prepared to leave, Hugo walked them to the door, promising that this was only the first of many visits and happy moments together. "See you soon," Hugo said with a sincere smile. "I look forward to seeing you again and continuing to build our new story together." When the door closed and Hugo was alone, he looked around his mansion, now filled with newly created memories. He knew that despite all the challenges to come, he was ready to face everything alongside his family, with a new beginning full of love and hope. Spending more time together after that special dinner at the mansion, Hugo felt it was time to take an even bigger step to strengthen the bonds with Raphael and Luisa. The connection that had begun to be mended was fragile, and he knew that more time and shared experiences were needed to truly repair the relationship and build a solid connection with his brother and niece. So with renewed enthusiasm, Hugo decided to invite Raphael and Luisa to spend an entire weekend at his home. He thought that extended time together could allow everyone to get to know each other better and start creating lasting memories. Additionally, he hoped this immersion would help make up for lost time and offer an opportunity for everyone to grow even closer. On Friday afternoon, Raphael and Luisa arrived at Hugo's mansion with suitcases and hopeful smiles. Hugo had planned a series of activities to ensure the weekend would be special. As soon as they arrived, he greeted them with a warm hug and an invitation to explore what his home and the surroundings had to offer. "Make yourselves at home," Hugo said, showing Raphael and Luisa the rooms prepared especially for their visit. The rooms were cozy, decorated with personal touches that reflected the care and attention Hugo had put into making their stay comfortable. After settling in, Hugo took Raphael and Luisa for a walk in the garden. The mansion had an extensive green space, with a small pond, lush trees and colorful flowers that created a relaxing and cheerful atmosphere. Hugo knew this space would be perfect for them to enjoy peaceful and leisurely moments. During the walk, Hugo and Raphael talked about various topics, from old times to the new experiences they had lived. Hugo made a point of listening to Raphael attentively, showing genuine interest in his stories and concerns. Luisa, in turn, explored the garden, admiring the plants and butterflies flying around. Hugo accompanied her, explaining the different flowers and trees while Luisa asked curious questions and showed her enthusiasm. On Saturday, Hugo prepared a special breakfast. He had hired a chef to prepare a delicious and varied meal. The table was filled with fresh fruit, warm bread, natural juices, and lovingly made treats. They all sat together and talked about their plans for the day, laughing and sharing stories. The breakfast was the perfect start to a day full of activities. The plan for the day included a visit to the local park, where Hugo had organized a picnic. With a large basket of food and a blanket spread out on the green grass, they spent the afternoon enjoying the sun and each other's company. Hugo, Raphael, and Luisa played frisbee, chatted, and shared laughs. The relaxed atmosphere helped ease any remaining tension and allowed everyone to have fun together. In the evening, Hugo prepared a special dinner on the mansion's terrace. Soft lights and candles created a magical atmosphere, and the sound of gentle music in the background made the night even more special. They sat at the table, enjoyed a delicious meal, and shared their hopes and dreams for the future. During the dinner, Hugo gave a simple but heartfelt speech. He expressed his gratitude for having Raphael and Luisa in his life, and emphasized how much the opportunity to reconnect and build new family bonds meant to him. His eyes were shining with emotion, and he could see that Raphael and Luisa were equally touched. Sunday was reserved for a relaxing activity, a family movie session. Hugo set up a cozy space in the living room, with pillows and blankets scattered around, and selected a range of movies that everyone could enjoy. They watched fun and exciting films, laughed together, and shared popcorn and sodas. It was a simple but extremely meaningful moment that helped cement the new family dynamic. When it was time to say goodbye, everyone was a little sad to see the weekend come to an end. Hugo, Raphael, and Luisa embraced and exchanged promises to meet again soon. The experience had been a success, and the hope that the family bonds would become stronger and more lasting was more alive than ever. "Thank you for this amazing weekend," Raphael said with a sincere smile. "It was wonderful to spend this time with you and Luisa. We look forward to our next gatherings." Hugo smiled, feeling a wave of happiness. "I am too, Raphael. Let's keep building our story together." This was just the beginning. As Raphael and Luisa walked away, Hugo watched them leave with a sense of satisfaction and hope. He knew that the path to mending a relationship and building a new connection could be long. But that weekend had been an important step towards a more united and harmonious future for his family. A new hope. The gentle morning breeze on Monday filled the air with a sense of renewal. Hugo, while preparing for work, felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time: hope. The days had dragged for him in recent years, and his life, despite being filled with material achievements, seemed devoid of true joy. But that weekend with Raphael and Luisa changed everything. Now he was excited, with a new sparkle in his eyes and a satisfied smile on his face. As he drove to the office, Hugo reflected on each moment of the weekend: Luisa's laughter in the garden, Raphael's sincere hug, and the sense of belonging and love that had filled the house. These memories were not just sweet recollections. They were clear signs that something meaningful was taking shape. At work, Hugo was more focused and productive than ever. He knew that the true value of life was not in great fortunes or professional achievements, but in the personal relationships we build. Every decision he made was now guided by this new understanding. He made sure to allocate time to plan, not just for his business but for his family. Monday's lunch was a moment of revelation for Hugo. While eating, he was already mentally sketching out a plan for the future. With renewed enthusiasm, he thought about how he could continue to strengthen these bonds with Raphael and Luisa. He decided that they would not only meet occasionally but spend more time together, creating lasting memories. A new focus on family. At the beginning of the following week, Hugo began planning a series of activities to strengthen his relationship with Raphael and Luisa. He knew that a single visit was not enough to make up for lost time, so he crafted a schedule of meetings and events that would promote their connection. Hugo sent Raphael an invitation for a family lunch, promising a special meal at his mansion. Additionally, he planned a weekend trip to a location of shared interest that he had discovered during their conversations. He wanted to ensure that these experiences were not only enjoyable, but also meaningful. For each planned activity, Hugo thought about how to make them memorable. He considered taking Raphael and Luisa to explore nature trails, where they could walk and talk peacefully. He imagined a cultural outing to an art exhibit, allowing them to share thoughts and inspirations. And of course, he prepared more relaxed moments, such as a family game afternoon and a gratitude dinner, where they could reflect on the progress made and the bond strengthened. Hugo's focus was clear. Family was now his top priority. He wanted to ensure that Raphael and Luisa knew how important they were to him, and that they were always in his thoughts and plans. He saw family as the true treasure of life, something that no material success could replace. Conclusion. As time went on, the change in Hugo's life was palpable. He was not only reclaiming lost time with Raphael and Luisa, but also creating a richer and more loving future. Each meeting, each planned activity was a step towards a new family story, one where the importance of human connection was at the center of everything. Hugo knew there was still much work to be done to strengthen these bonds, but the most important thing was that he was committed and full of hope. The weekend with Raphael and Luisa had been the beginning of a new chapter in his life, a chapter where family, with all its ups and downs, became the priority. With a heart full of gratitude and a renewed spirit, Hugo prepared to face the future with the certainty that, with Raphael and Luisa by his side, he had finally found the true meaning of happiness. The family, which had been set aside for so long, was now at the center of his life, and Hugo was determined to keep that focus forever. So, what did you think of this emotional discovery in Hugo's life? It's incredible how a simple meeting can completely change someone's trajectory, isn't it? If you enjoyed this story and want to see more inspiring and emotional content, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. That way you won't miss any of our videos. And we want to hear your opinion. Leave a comment below telling us what you thought of Hugo's reunion and how it touched you. Your participation is very important to us and helps us create even more stories that will touch your heart. Until the next video.